It is an election year for the Queensland Premier, you know, so, I mean, is it a ruse? Is it a ruse? She doesn't want a health crisis right before an election.
Yeah, well, this is true, and I think, look, clearly the state's focus a little bit differently from the Commonwealth is going to be a bit more on the health system, right? Because ultimately the state's responsible for hospitals. So it's a fair point that Anna Palaszczuk makes about making sure that the state's kept COVID-free and that they're dealing with other states which are COVID-free. So I can understand the concern, but whether or not it's sustainable that we can continue to sort of see zero cases day in, day out for weeks and months,
yeah, I don't think
I suppose time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, even most of the leaders, even health authorities at the moment are saying, you know, you're just not going to get to zero. Eradication's not going to happen. It's going to be too hard. But anyway, moving on to IR reform. How do you see this one playing out? Plenty of horse trading to come in the coming weeks and even months.
Yeah, look, the federal government gets a tick, I think, for setting up these working groups and getting employer groups and employee groups at the same table. Where it ends up, I don't know. We've got different priorities here, obviously, and award simplification seems to be, I think, a number one item for both the Commonwealth Government and for employer groups. This complexity which you've been talking about this morning, Pete. So that's, you know, if you can get the unions over the line in terms of getting through the end of that process and ensuring that at the end of it, employees aren't worse off, there's potentially a way forward there. And then, of course, on the other end, we've got unions pushing for more secure, effectively more secure working conditions for those who are casual workers. We've seen through the COVID crisis that casual workers in some ways have been the first against the wall, and that vulnerability has sort of been writ large. So, yeah, whether or not there can be some potential offerings from the Commonwealth for both sides to be able to get productivity gains, which, let's be frank, the economy really needs coming out of this COVID crisis, and with the gains to be spread more evenly between employees and employers, that will be really good for the economy as well. So, look, fingers crossed, and there's a lot of water to go under the bridge between now and the end of this process.
So is Labor effectively sidelined in all of this?
Look, potentially when it comes to these particular working groups, yes, they are. But as we know, and I think the government's been saying today, the IR Minister Christian Porter, that regardless of this particular process, we will see legislation in the House by the end of the year, and ultimately then there'll be opportunity for Labor in consultation with groups to take a position. So, yes, perhaps when it comes to the day-to-day workings of these working groups, Labor's sidelined, but as we know, these issues will find their way into the media. Labor will continue to have its voice and put its view.
What about, there's an interesting conversation that's being had. We had Anthony Albanese on a press conference earlier today talking about this. It's about the super guarantee, and Jason Clare spoke about the need to have that continue at the moment. The Labor movement, or plenty of people within the Labor movement, are calling for that to stick. And I guess there is some concern that maybe it won't in this debate that's taking place about moving forward in this country at the moment. What's your point of view?
Yeah, it's interesting that super's been relatively controversial in the last few months, and we've saw the early access to super arrangements the government put in place for employees who lost their work, and now a super guarantee is now being thrown back in the mix. There's a legislated timetable, Pete, which sort of takes the increase from 9.5% through to 12% by the end of 2025. The Coalition's not necessarily traditionally a fan of compulsory super and the super guarantee, so you've seen the likes of Andrew Bragg and other backbenchers continue to sort of suggest that perhaps that's not really a priority for the government. So there's continuing concerns that perhaps the government may move at some point to put that on hold. They've got a super review underway as well, which may end up sort of providing some evidence to lead that way. But we know on the other end that Labor has consistently pushed for that super guarantee to go to 12%. Unions are the same. So that could be a potential flashpoint in the backdrop as we sort of see these IR working groups go.